What's up, guys? It's Lowdown, Jeremy Conn here. Pickdawgz.com. Sorry, just got a little distracted. As I'm doing these, it was funny. I was just saying to somebody else, the first time I did one of these, I recorded it like 12 times. And then now when I screw up or I find myself bumbling and stumbling, sometimes they're going, during a radio show when you have co-hosts, it makes it really easy to try to, get your thoughts together, find information. I'm one of those guys that I hate dead air, and if you don't know what that is, it's like being on the radio and then all of a sudden it's silent, and then you hear somebody talking, you're not sure if something happened to my radio. So I'm one of those guys that always fills it. So that's why I have diarrhea of the mouth. But it's been an interesting week, to say the least. Please click the like and subscribe button. That does help us out. And click the notifications button. It lets you know every time I post one of these. And as I said, I'm going to try and be better at this, but getting on with the comments and posting day of what I'm seeing from the weather. So if you watched yesterday's video, I got up in the morning around, 4:30 a.m., 5 a.m., somewhere in there, and I put in all the leans for weather. And when I say leans, guys, it's just what the weather's telling you to do. It does not mean I'm betting that game. It is an edge, in my opinion. Like, there is advantage to knowing that the wind's blowing out, or it's 50 degrees, or there's rain in the forecast, all those things. So that's why I try to bring it up. I had some other guy who was like, really, you look into weather that much? And I'm like, yeah, it's important. The games are outside. I look at weather in football and baseball. Magically, I don't look at it in hockey and basketball. Well, maybe there will be a time. I know they do have some outdoor hockey games. But, just looking at this week, it's been odd for me just because I had a winning night on Tuesday. And the way that I always do my plays is I put together the leans, the things I like, and I'm obviously not putting them on the site because we're just selling what we're selling and trying to keep it kind of bunched in. But I had my top five, and I went 3-2. I feel like everybody bought the two losers, and it's maybe my write-ups weren't good enough. Maybe I'm just confident in my plays. I did really like Tuesday's board a lot, and I felt like the two rain delay games that I got, the St. Louis Cardinals game that never really got going against the Nats, and had some other plays that worked out, like the Giants, liked the over in the Yankees game. I hit all my prop plays. If you guys go back and look at some of the things I've given you, and I try to talk about prop plays. The only problem for you guys is I give it out the day after. Maybe I'll try to post some of those in there too. I can't post all of them, but maybe I'll try to post one a day or something to throw out there, and because these are actually bets that I will be placing. Like, this is something where I'm giving you whatever information I have. I record this early and try to give you an edge somewhere, tell you what I would lean in these games. Does not mean I'm betting it, and then give a free play out at the end after we do 4 games. So appreciate you guys watching this. You'll get story time from me. You'll get me rambling off and telling embarrassing things, all kinds of stuff. Whatever's on my mind, I usually talk about. And in my neighborhood, we've been celebrating July. We celebrated July 6th, 7th, 8th, and hopefully we'll be celebrating the 9th. It's going to be a fun time. I can't believe I live in a white trash neighborhood. Well, I shouldn't say that. There's a lot of nice people here. I grew up white trash, and I still consider myself just a tad fancier version of white trash. So I know what it's like being broke. I know what it's like being poor. I know what it's like my new clothes being my brother's old clothes. All those things. But man, oh man, I can't believe in my neighborhood I must have some of the richest people because they have an ungodly amount of fireworks. Like the day after the 4th of July night, because they let off fireworks on the 3rd in my county where I live in Maryland. And of course I moved right by it, and I have a dog that's deathly afraid of fireworks and thunderstorms. So it's been an awesome week. The people in my neighborhood, like that 4th of July, they lit off fireworks for 2.5 hours. Now, I know it wasn't one singular person doing it. It was almost like they're having dueling banjos or dueling fireworks. Pop, pop, pop. I don't get it. And they're bottle rockets. I mean, a lot of these are just poop. But my dog hears that pop and she loses her mind. Anyway, as I said, I typically do stuff like this. If I ever say this is going to be a short podcast, it probably means I'm just going to keep talking. So one of the things I've said, like when I'm doing my prop bets or when I'm gambling, I like to find an edge. Somebody asked me the other day, it's like, hey, how come you didn't talk about the hot dog eating contest and give out a play? And I'm like, that's gambling, man. Like, I don't know that you can find an edge unless you found out Joey Chestnut was, he had a big dinner the night before or he wasn't feeling well. But to me, that's gambling. There's nothing wrong with gambling. It's just I prefer to try to win. I like to find an edge or feel like that I have an advantage in a game. And so that's why I look at all this stuff. And as I was saying, I didn't have the sheet in front of me yesterday, but like I told you, I get up and I don't know if you guys can see that. That's all the pitchers for the slate and all their projected strikeouts and what my algorithm says. I match it up. I make little notes. For example, I don't mind telling you this one. This was for Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday. As I wrote down everything, like I talked about liking Lucas Giolito on yesterday's pod. We haven't seen the game yet, so I don't know how he did. 6.5 strikeouts is where he was at. And it was plus money, so I was all over it. As I've said, the Rockies are a team I target in certain situations. It matters the prop, and I know you can move the line. I don't like betting higher odds. You won't see me giving out 200 favorites. And I know I talked about the Red Sox yesterday, but I was basically saying I like that prop play. The Red Sox were like minus 270. I'm not betting that. If you throw it in parlays, hats off to you if that's what you want to do. Yeah, it does help increase the odds, but you're also throwing something else in there that can go awry. And we've seen minus 400, minus 500 favorites lose outright. So that's how it gets crazy. But the two things I noticed on this one, it wasn't really a great day forward, or maybe I can just kind of give you an idea before I get into these games. So I noticed that Mackenzie Gore's prop was 6.5 in a lot of places, and I had him at 5.8 strikeouts in that matchup against the Cardinals. So I was going to bet his under, and I know it may have been juiced a little bit more, but his over prop, I couldn't get to that either, and I didn't like betting it, to be honest with you, because by the time I looked at the props, most places had him at 5.5, and I know you can change it, but I just stay away from it because there's so many good prop plays that I could have, or so many things to choose from. I'm not going to say they're good plays, but I trust my algorithm. And when you're matching stuff up and you see this guy's projected to get almost a full strikeout more than what his prop says, and then if you go look at it and you say, well, wait a minute, this is something where he's plus money or he's way heavy minus 180 or something, then you may scratch it off the list. And that's kind of what happened to me today it is today, but with the Lucas Giolito bet, I took it. I did place that bet over 6.5 plus 110, plus 115, I think, in some places. But I also do this for the props as well. I look at my algorithm and check out total bases, and I look at all the guys that are 2+. And here was the list I had today. I left a couple off. And I mean, a lot of typical guys you're used to seeing. Judge, Soto, Alonso, Acuna, Lindor, Seager, Riley, Buxton, Ramirez. That's Augustin Ramirez from the Marlins. So he would be one I would circle. He's minus 110. Jordan Westburg, plus 100. I would circle him. Trout, plus 105. Kyle Tucker, minus 125, who I did love, by the way. Nimmo, minus 135. And so a couple things that I started to notice that, okay, there's 4 Mets in my top 10 hitters in the algorithm, and Tommy Sagano is rated as the worst pitcher on the slate according to matchup. And we talked about that yesterday as he's been struggling. We get perfect hitting conditions with a little bit of rain in the forecast, and it's so hot in Baltimore. So if you go back to looking at Wednesday's slate, you can kind of check out how those 4 Mets players did if they got over 1.5 bases. I would never suggest betting them all, but they were all kind of juiced up. And that's obviously when I see those types of hitters, I see Tommy Sagano at the bottom, the Mets hitters at the top of the hitters list. I look at it, it's great weather. So, of course, the Orioles over is going to look like a great play. Or you might say maybe I bet the Mets team total since so many of them showed up, and I'd be fine with that as well. But it's just kind of how I look at games and break things down. And with those prop plays, the ones that I ended up placing, Juan Soto was my favorite. He had the highest base total, if you will. Like I think it said he was going to get 2.56 bases, and I know you can't get a half a base, but they're averages. So in saying that, his rate was higher than Judge's going up against Seattle. And I mean, I feel like you have to, especially if he's 135. I mentioned the other day that Bobby Witt was minus 180, and I couldn't bet it, and he was in a perfect spot as the number 1 hitter. And he hit it, but again, minus 180, you're almost losing 2-1. If gets walked, hits a sac fly, hits a single, lots of things that could go wrong. But when I'm looking at it, that's what I look for. I looked at Kyle Tucker. I loved him against the Twins on Wednesday, Soto, and I did bet Jordan Westburg as well. So I usually kind of keep it to 3 to 5 props on full slates, just because, again, I mean, if I'm doing gambling or whatever, sides and totals, if I'm doing multiple sports and then you start mixing in props, you're putting a lot out there. That's why I like to find plus money on those prop bets, so I'm not losing. I got a mustache hair in my nose. I'm not losing, money on the juice, and that's one of the things. We'll get to it later on, but in the Super Bowl, where all those prop bets come out, and now people can bet props every week, but they're all elevated. Like, if you're paying minus 110 on something normally, and then you go look at the coin toss, and it's like, well, why is it minus 115? They just because they know people are going to bet it. And, you bet somebody over 33.5 receiving yards and it's, minus 200 or something. And yeah, you're going to look at all those things. You're going to pay heavy juice and you only need one thing to go wrong really for it to mess up. All right. I've talked long enough. That's almost 11 minutes of me just jibber jabbering. Let's get into this. I have the wrong sheet. Where are we at? All right, here we go. Told you, I'm out of sorts. Let's start off with the Mets and Orioles. It's an afternoon game on Thursday. One thing I'll say about this, and I'll post something once the video gets posted. Mets have a TBD. I looked everywhere to see who it potentially could be. I think it's going to be a bullpen game unless I'm not 100% familiar with the Mets farm system. If there's somebody in AAA that they could call up for a spot start. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Maybe is Blackburn ready? I'll post in the morning about it, and we'll go from there. But Mets and Orioles, it's Charlie Morton for the O's. It feels like the mid-90s. There's going to be light rain. I've talked about this. The humidity picks up. 4-mile-an-hour wind blowing out. Not much help, but it doesn't hurt. Charlie Morton's been great. I've never seen a season turn around like this. Like, he was the worst pitcher I had seen in a long time, and I hated him. I actually said on my show I would like to shoot him into the sun. And then I had to apologize to him. People were calling in saying, you said Charlie Morton sucked, and now look at him. And I'm going, everyone said he sucked. Nobody said he was good. He was giving up. He had an ERA that was almost double digits. His whip was around 2. It was crazy to watch him. He sucked so bad, and now he has just been on, and he looks good. I would lean towards the Orioles in this matchup without knowing the Mets possibly having a bullpen game. I am going to suggest the over. I still think it's great hitting conditions. And, bullpen games can be tough with overs, and I know Charlie Morton's been good. I do like the Orioles even without knowing who the pitcher is, and I'm not trying to sound homerish. I like the starting pitcher I would be betting on. And without knowing who it's going to be for the Mets, I know it's not going to be somebody very good, although bullpen games can be difficult when you're betting totals. So I would lean towards the Orioles there, slight lean towards the over too. I'll talk about it more in the morning. Here we go. We got the Nationals and the Cardinals. This is Michael Soroka, who just did me dirty the other weekend, and Miles Michaelis, however you want to say it. Wind is right to left at about 9 miles an hour, and it's about 90 degrees. In St. Louis and Kansas City, and if some of you guys are in there, you can probably attest to it, that dry heat, it gets super hot there. And I look for a lot of these games that people aren't targeting in Kansas City and St. Louis. Sometimes you look at the bats and you're going, oh, they're not hitting, and that's what's happened. But they just had a week against the Pirates where the bats took off. They were phenomenal hitting conditions. So, but here with St. Louis, I'm going to suggest an under. Like, I do like the way Michael Soroka's been pitching, even though he melted down in the last game. He did hit my strikeout prop, so I was happy about that. But the Nats were my lone loss that day, and they lost like 11-1 or 12-1. And it doesn't bother me if I lose by 10 runs or 1 run. The 10-run games are easier to turn off, right? You don't expect anything to happen. And then every once in a while you wake up with a surprise, like, did they really come back? But, yeah, so it doesn't bother me when there's the blowouts. But I would lean towards the under here. So what Michaelis does is he can get some soft contact and ground balls. I'd rather bet on him being or pitching well at home. The same thing with Soroka. He just doesn't put guys on base. His whip is just above. Well, after his last game, his whip went up, but it was under like 1.1. It was like a 1.04 at one point, I think. And all that's telling you is he doesn't put guys on base, which helps eliminate the big inning. So that's why I think the under is a good play here, even with how hot it is. And then, I think the Cardinals bullpen, they got some live arms there as well. The Nats, not so much, but I do think the under is a good play. Let's go to the Tampa Bay Rays and the Boston Red Sox. Winds in about 4 miles an hour towards home plate. Low 70s. And we have Walker Buehler and Taj Bradley. So I go back to this: Red Sox, Yankees, Orioles, Rockies, Angels, and I even target the A's, although they've kind of pushed more towards the middle of the pack as teams that strike out a ton. the A's have been doing much better. And again, like it's decimal points that separate the guys. Because if you go look up, you can punch in Google or whatever and say MLB strikeout leaders by team, and you'll get the percentages. And I told you the Blue Jays are the best. I think they're in the high sixes. And then like the worst teams are around 9 strikeouts per game, 10 strikeouts per game, but they're all, off by fractions of a point. So, but with this game, I do think it's interesting. I would like to take a look at Taj Bradley's strikeout prop. He might be a guy that I'm on tomorrow. Walker Buehler has just been hitting so many bats, and so is Taj Bradley. For the ability to get Ks, he gives up some hard contact. It looks like outside of the temperature being a little chilly, and maybe that wind changes. I don't think so, though. I would lean towards the over here, and it's something where I can't trust Walker Buehler and the way he's been pitching. He had 2 starts, and everybody was screaming, like, man, how come we didn't kick the tires on him? And then you saw why, because he's lost it. He's just not a good pitcher anymore. That being said, with me saying this, he probably comes out and pitches a gem. He's very capable of doing it. He's just not, more times than not, he's going to get shelled. And I think this is a good opportunity to take a look at the over. There were no major wind games today to kind of throw at you. Some precipitation in the area, light rain. It didn't look like anybody was doomed to get rained out. Maybe a delay or something, but the only time I look at delays is if I'm betting on the starting pitcher, whether it be an underplay or if I'm betting on that team. Yeah, I might scratch out that bet if I feel like there could be a rain delay in the middle of the game, just because you're betting on the starter, or you go first 5 if that's what you want to do. But this last game here, let me get to it, because I think this is a really interesting one, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be a play for me. Seattle at New York. We got the Mariners, and you've watched some of the things that have happened this week with Cal Raleigh and Judge homering in the same game. I think on Tuesday, all of the big names that people typically parlay together, they all homered. But I didn't think a lot of people were on it that night, including Cal Raleigh late, who I had him over 1.5 bases, and that worked out well for me. But Brian, versus Marcus Stroman. The thing I'll say about Stroman is he had one really, really bad start at the beginning of the year, and then coming back out, he had pitched better. The wind is blowing in 5 to 6 miles an hour. It's about 82 degrees, somewhere in the low 80s. And, when you look at the matchup, the wind's blowing towards third. We talked about this yesterday. You got 2 right-handed pitchers on the mound. If the wind's blowing in from third, it's going to make it tougher on lefties to hit the ball out. It's not like this great wind is blowing in. It's a little bit of a help. It's a bump. So if you're looking for an edge, I think it's there. And I'm going to look at Brian Woo's K-prop as well. I target the Yankees. They strike out a ton, and he has just been fantastic this year. I'm looking at the under here. I think Marcus Stroman can get some Ks. I might even look at his K-prop, because Seattle is one of those other teams that, sure, they have a lot of pop, but boy, do they miss a lot too. So my free play is going to be the under in Seattle and New York. Guys, appreciate you watching. Make sure you're checking out all the premium plays over at Pickdawgz.com. I know we have Christmas in July coming up. I'll change up some of my packages to suit that. Football right around the corner. As I said, I got a big surgery coming up August 4th, so this pod will go away for a short period of time. But as soon as I can talk again after the throat surgery, I'll be back on here and doing the pods again. So appreciate you guys listening. Check out Pickdawgz.com. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, or if you got any questions, just hit me up at JConnSports. We'll see you there.